Okay, well, we are going to shift gears and go on to the Go Tiny Showcase. Feel free, everyone, to stay around because we are going to be diving into the innovators that are innovating this industry. So how many of you here are interested in going tiny for yourself? I know we had someone here earlier that was actually building a community down in Texas, which is great. Love to meet more developers. Who here is involved in tiny homes for your own personal benefit? Yes, I see Meg. Wonderful. I know Sharon is. I know some others that are cameras off right now. Andy, yay. I see all three of you are part of the Go Tiny Academy. And I actually have a really cool image I was sent that I feel like a proud parent, even though it's not a parent thing. I'm not a mom, but when you have a picture like this show up, and this was the actual image that came first and said, hey, look at the tiny home, it's being built. And then only a matter, that was in October 11th. And yesterday, this is how this tiny home looks like. And this is one of my Academy students, Allie, now graduate. And I think Sharon's next. We actually have another woman, Andrea Montano, that also is going tiny. You know, I'm up to 100,000 tiny homes that we want to create in this country. And every one of those tiny homes is going to need something unique in it. And so let me share my screen and dive right in. Okay. So welcome to the Go Tiny Showcase, the double header. We have the Thea Thursday and then the Go Tiny Showcase. I created this showcase when what we found within Thea was that there's a big need for support as a nonprofit, as Christina knows. And we started getting support through sponsors. Well, then I took that on the road. When we were looking at going out to Colorado, we looked at the pricing of fuel. We're like, wow, okay, we need some additional support for us to go there to talk about really the soft skills. You know, the consulting that we provide is very different than people that provide housing. But embedded inside these houses are companies that actually are making the products that make this home even better. So I am super excited. Oh, here we go. We'll go back to introduce Gold Heat, Univix, Precision Temp, Nature Lou, Go Tiny Academy, TinyFreedom, and the Tiny Home Industry Association are all the showcase sponsors. And this is an actual image. There's my husband and I. And here are these big, tall, 3-foot wide, 6-foot tall banners. And this is the line in Pleasanton, the recent Tiny Fest, that was funneling into the Wilderwise. This is actually a 17-foot tall tiny home. And so what will happen is that people are sitting in line, they get to learn about the different companies that are here and that are powering, that are heating, that are doing all the things to make the tiny home. You know, the cool thing about builders is they build the tiny home with a number of different products that they bring together. But those companies do not actually build the actual products. It takes companies that are building them to match up with the builders. And this is really what the Go Showcase is about, is to highlight and feature these innovations that otherwise may not be known about if you're going to an event, if they weren't in this type of showcase. Because each one of these showcases, or each one of these companies, to show up and do a booth of their own for the 10 different events. I think by the end of the year, we'll be at a total of 11 events. That's a lot for a company to do, but it's not a lot for someone like myself that's going to each of these shows, that's, you know, knowing the industry and has the connections to the builders. So it's a multi-pronged opportunity for people that are actual builders to learn about these products as well as buyers. Because as I've learned from buying our own tiny home, we had to learn a lot about all the products that went into the home because our builder went out of business in the middle of the build, pretty much at the shell point, right? So about the time we're putting in the walls and the cabinets and all the appliances, that's when the builder went out of business. And so we had to learn a lot about going forward. So I do want to bring out, let's see, I'm going to stop my share. Is Gold Heat in the house? Gold Heat. Okay. They may not have, well, we are going to go over to their website. Oops, excuse me. And I have a really, I can show you all kinds of pictures on their website, but this story is so important. Right now, I'm going to stand up. Let's see if I can get this angle. Yes, this is key. So this, in the summer, talking about radiant floor heating's not been that easy because it's hot. But now that we're wearing sweaters and jackets and becoming winter, that is the mini split. And I can reach up right here and it's warm. I have to have the fan on to run any kind of heating into this room. So where's the best place to put heat? Right at your feet. And I like to say it's all about keeping your body warm from your tiny toes to your nose. Oh, this is perfect timing. Russ just jumped in. So we will welcome him with open arms. Perfect timing, Russ. Hi, Russ. Perfect timing. We were just starting to talk about Gold Heat.
I sent you a email saying I might be a few minutes late.
It's great. I just there's a mini split up there and my feet are cold down here. And now it's finally winter because we've been talking about Gold Heat during all the summertime, which is a little bit, different than when you're wearing jackets and sweaters and you really are thinking about the heater and heating of your feet. So I will give you host access so you can share your slide deck. Because one of the coolest videos is really that heating video, which I love that you guys share.
Fantastic. Let me go ahead and do this. This time I know where I'm going. I just have the dumb bar in front of it.
So who here wants a radiant floor heating in the chat in your tiny home? Just say me. Yes. Debbie says me. It's not for just the wealthy.
No, it is not. In fact, Gold Heat's kind of ethos is accessible luxury, right? We do not believe that luxury means scarcity. Just because some people get to experience something wonderful doesn't mean everybody shouldn't, and also doesn't mean that it makes it any less enjoyable for anybody else. And so we build products meant to be easy for the builder, easy to install, creating an accessible pathway to service their customers, as well as easy and dependable and reliable for the end user, so that that luxury truly is accessible for all. And so, as Lindsay introduced, right, we deal with electric radiant floor heat. The reason that is what we do and all we do is because, there is an issue, right? A mini split can only do so much. It heats the air, right? But that air is always moving around, right? And that could leave you feeling cold in certain areas of your space. They might not work as efficiently as it gets too cold. And if you try to augment with things like space heaters, not only are you burning a bunch of energy using them, but you're taking up valuable square footage in a tiny home. And that can be whether you're wall mounted or just sitting on the floor. That is room that you don't really have to sacrifice. This is the video that Lindsay was just mentioning, right? Just an illustration of that forced air and how it moves throughout a space. Whereas radiant heat sits underneath the floor and delivers heat evenly throughout the entire space. Radiant heat is very different from forced air, right? Forced air is what's called convective heat, right? You are heating the air, that air is moving through the space and transferring its heat to you through direct contact, technically through conduction at that point. And so, when you open your door and that air goes out the door, your space is cooler. You now need to recondition the air in your space to bring it back up to temperature. Or if your unit shuts off, you start losing that heat, feeling colder, it needs to turn back on and cycle in order to make you comfortable. Radiant heat works differently. We don't heat the air, we heat the surfaces, right? This is infrared light that is being beamed up from your floor. It is no different from sunlight, right? When you stand out in the sun, even if it's a crisp breeze blowing by, that heat that you feel from the sun warms you directly. The only difference with us is we're not delivering the damaging UV rays, we're just delivering the heat, right? So we're not gonna get you a great tan, I'm sorry, you still gotta lay outside or go to the tanning salon or something like that, but we're gonna deliver that same kind of warmth to the core that you get from direct sunlight. And we're delivering it not just directly to you, but to all of the surfaces around you, which represent thermal mass that hold that heat and then begin to deliver it back into the space. And so we don't actually stay on all the time. We actually turn on for a little while and then shut off for a while and then turn on for a little while and shut off for a little while. When we're on, we're barely using the same amount of electricity as a hairdryer, and we're only on for maybe 40 to 50% of the time, typically during the winter heating season. And Ty mentioned some of this, right? Heaters are going to distract visually, they take up space, they make noise, right? Wouldn't it be really nice to have something in your space that is dead silent, right? Doesn't take up any space. You don't even know it's there except for the comfort that it delivers to you. And it's not kicking up the dog dander, right? And the dust. I mean, especially when you're in a small space. It's one thing if you're in a big house, right? And the heater turns on, and there's lots of room for the air to move around. But the smaller that space gets, the more disruptive that breeze is, and the more it kicks up into the air. And so we want to keep that down and just deliver that warmth that you're looking for. In fact, that direct warmth even means that you're going to be more comfortable in a lower air temperature and more consistently throughout. And that's going to translate into energy savings for you. Also, keeping that heat in the floor, right? When you're built like a tiny home is, you want to keep the whole undercarriage dry. You want to prevent any rot or moisture being in that subsurface. And so keeping that warm also keeps the relative humidity down and keeps a drier system that allows your entire home to last longer. How do we do it? I'm glad you asked. We do it with for tiny homes. Gold Heat in general makes two products. I'll just tell you that. We make a product that is called Gold Heat, and that is for under your stone and tile. It requires thin set or self-leveler. It's great for traditional architecture and things like that. So, if you have needs like that, reach out. I can get more into that. Obviously, we're talking about tiny homes today, and typically in tiny homes, you're putting down LVT, right? I mean, that's kind of the go-to flooring today. Durable, rugged, easy to install, relatively cost-effective. So, great flooring choice. But that means, that you need a product that can go underneath it and provide that kind of warmth without being intrusive, without being difficult to handle or manage. And that's what Black Gold does. It's a super thin film-based product. And so what you're looking at here are copper buses that carry the electrical current, and then carbon filament that runs between them that actually generates the heat. And this entire system is only about 1/16 of an inch thick. So really doesn't add any kind of height to your floor, which is great because you don't have a lot of height to give up. And so simply glues right down to the subfloor, route a couple of little pockets for where the terminations go. By the way, everything we send out comes pre-terminated. All those terminations are encapsulated in thermoplastic. This is something that we do very different from others, right? A lot of the systems that are similar to this are going to have kind of tape over those connections, that can allow moisture in over time, potential corrosion, but it's real cheap and fast to do. We tend not to do things cheap and fast. We tend to do them right. But because we do them right, we put processes in place to do them as effectively as possible, and that allows us to keep our costs down. Plus, since we custom cut every piece to the exact length that you need, what that means is that there's no waste in our systems. So if you go buy an off-the-shelf kit, on a per square foot of product, you might save $1 or $2. But you're going to throw 20–30% of that in the garbage because the strips are going to be too long. You're going to cut them off, and then you're not going to know what to do with that excess. It's going to go in the trash. Our systems are designed based on your floor plan, We work with you or your builder to figure out exactly what you need. And then we make a kit in-house that's designed exactly for that floor plan. And so everything glues down in place, simple can of like 3M spray mount to go ahead and do that. And then you can lay your floor right down on top of it. If you're going to glue down, you glue down right to the surface. If you're going to do a floating floor, we recommend a simple 6mm poly between our system and the floor, just as a friction protection. Dirt cheap stuff, really fast to install. Our builders can get a black gold system installed in a full-size tiny home in just a couple of hours, and it's something you never have to think about again. Everything ties back up to the thermostat, and you're good to go. Anything from your non-programmables up to your Wi-Fi enabled smart thermostat, etc. You want to control it from your phone, no problem. You can control it from your phone. We build everything in Oregon, just outside of Portland and Hillsboro. Our engineers are there. Our production is there. I'm not there right now. I'm in a hotel room in Alabama, but generally I'm there. And so when you call in, you're not getting sent off to some call center somewhere. We don't have people we're hiring every week and training just enough to get on the phone with you. It is truly our engineers, our staff, the people that work on this every single day that engage with you and your builders to make sure that you have the information that you need, the support that you need, and deliver the quality that you need. And then no maintenance, right? So, even a mini split system, you put it in, great, it's in, it's running, but every year you're bringing somebody out. I mean, I own a system like that, $200 a pop, right? Every year, $200 a pop, get that thing serviced and keep it up. This is the only zero maintenance system that you are going to run into. And we do things within the product. One thing I didn't call out, I usually do, I apologize for missing it, is that little bit of white that you see there. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but actually is. That separates the copper from the carbon and prevents galvanic corrosion. That's a silver inlay. And that's something that you rarely see in product like this. Really extends the life of the product, making sure that our floor heat is going to last longer than you do. Sorry, we are mortal. Our floor heat is not.
Oh, and Russ, what is LVP?
Luxury vinyl plank. Sorry.
Okay, I knew vinyl plank with the other, but I didn't know what the L was. Okay, thank you.
So LVP, luxury vinyl tile, luxury vinyl plank. It's kind of the common go-to flooring these days, right? Waterproof, relatively impervious, clicks together, goes down fast and easy, and has become the go-to. And that's all I have. Unless there are questions, if you need a builder referral, when we work with builders across the country, we're more than happy to do that. Lindsay's got a great list as well that she can refer you to, or if you're a builder and you've never used our products, touch base with me. Happy to walk you through it, share our installation videos with you, and show you how you can turn this on in your business.
Any questions for Russ? I actually want to show you, I'm going to show you another home. Have you worked directly with people that are like, hey, I want to work with my builder, and now you're going to be introducing your builder for the first time? Because what we're finding is builders don't necessarily add this as a standard. Oftentimes it's an upgrade, which I think should be a standard, and so do other builders. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
We work with new builders all the time. One of the really nice things about our product line, whether it be gold heat or black gold, is we do design for simplicity, right? And at the end of the day, we believe that this should not be complex. One of the reasons that we believe that you don't hear more about radiant floor heat in the US is because of this paradigm of complexity. A lot of the radiant heat products on the market today are essentially just a spool of wire. And what happens is that you have to lay a mat down, and it has all these little knobs on it. And you route the wire through the knobs, and you buy a kit, right? So you buy a kit for a 100 square foot room, or a 200 square foot room, or 300 square foot room. In doing so, and nobody builds a room to 100 square feet, right? Or 200 square feet. Even if it's like 96 square feet, that's still a difference. And so this grid, this perfect grid that you've got, there's no way that you are going to route that wire perfectly for perfectly even heat all the way across the floor. And if you don't get it close enough when you get done, guess what you're doing? Pulling it all up and you're putting it down again, right? And so there is this sense of complexity that occurs that we've tried to strip completely out. And so, I've said to builders before, and I've been proven right, I can tell you everything you need to know about installing our product on this phone call, and you can be successful. And they have been. We did go ahead and film a series of installation videos. They're available on our website. I can show you exactly where in a moment. I can't talk and click at the same time. My brain just doesn't work that well. But it really can be that easy. It's just some basic routing and glue down, and you're good to go. Who do I work with in Texas? Off the top of my head, I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to log into my database and take a look at the list. Whoever had asked that question, if you want to share your email address, I can look and see if we have anybody in that area. If not, whatever builder you're working with, I'm more than happy to connect with them and make sure that they can have a successful install.
And that's largely what we've done at the showcase, is that there's a bunch of builders, here's our suppliers. It's, a wonderful connection to make, because they're so busy building the home and then they put in the mini split like normal. But then those of us that live in the home, sitting under the mini split directly above, my husband can talk about this, your feet are cold. And as much as people tell me that something's efficient, maybe Russ, you can help me out with the words on this one.
Sure.
They're like, oh, but your mini split's really efficient. I'm like, yeah, but if it's not doing the job I need done, is that efficient?
That's 100% right. Mini splits as far as BTU output at the device to energy consumption are super efficient. They are technically beyond 100% efficient, which is awesome, right? And I have a ducted split system in my house, but I use I use heat pump technology in my house. I have a heat pump water heater, I have a heat pump heating system, right? Dual zone, whole 9 yards. Paid a lot of money for it. And from the cost to output the heat, yeah, it's great. But Lindsay's 100% right that when you blow hot air, right? Because I don't care how you're doing it, a forced air system, all forced air systems, oil, gas, mini splits, whatever, are doing the same thing. They're blowing hot air into a room, right? And heat moves from areas of high concentration to low concentration, right? Warm air is less dense than cold air. So what happens, wherever you blow that in, the first thing it's going to do is start to go up, right? And then it needs to spread its heat throughout the entire room, and it loses, and that dissipates and evens out as it blows more heat in. So you never truly have even heat throughout the entire space. But if your heat is coming literally from underneath your entire space, right, that provides that even comfort that just isn't achieved with forced air.
So true.
Andy, I will get that to you later when we're done here. I'm a few hours ahead. I'm going to go get a bite to eat, and then I will look that up and I will send you an email.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you so much for being here and being a constant support for our homes being heated evenly.
No problem. I do want to answer the one other question from Meg. How much does it cost relative to mini split installation and conduit? I don't know exactly what a mini split costs in tiny homes. Some of the stuff I've seen is in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. I've seen some a little bit higher than that. This is a general statement, right? Because you have 200 square foot tiny homes, you have 400 square foot tiny homes, and you have everything in between. I do know that a number of my builders post our floor heat as an option for about $2,500 installed in a new build. So that kind of gives you a sense of, of cost. Generally we are going to be less expensive than a mini split installation. One thing, and in total transparency, check your codes, right? Yeah, and especially in the tiny home world, codes are different, we will say. And so, you may be required to put in a forced air system simply to meet code and utilize us as secondary heat. And that varies by jurisdiction and type of structure and everything else. And unfortunately, I just can't be an expert on every single place. So I do say, if you're not going to put in an alternate heating source, and some people just put in the mini splits because you get the cooling out of it too, right? So that can be a good option. But check your code requirements, make sure that you're not required a forced air system. But honestly, there really aren't many environments that we can't effectively serve as primary heating from a comfort and efficiency and effectiveness standpoint. It would be purely just an outdated code requirement that we couldn't.
From all that I've seen, it's very limited in terms of what ANSI and NFPA. Think of your canvas tent pop-up trailer is what you can build an NFPA to, or a tiny home to the NFPA building standard. And then ANSI has like an R3 insulation. So the mini splits have gone way beyond what, traditional housing, even with like a separate air conditioner and whole house, installation. I do think they're good quality, especially for the air conditioner. Big thumbs up on that. What's nice about the Gold Heat is if you do have a really cold temperature day, Gold Heat can't do all of it. If it's like 20 to below zero out there, you're going to need additional heat. So the fact that you'd have that mini split anyway, because you're going to get it for the AC, but most of the year, like right now, just having, radiant floor heating here in this home that already has carpet, believe me, the more I've done work with Russ, I'm like, oh man, I really want something in this house that I'm in right now. And what's so great about tiny homes is all of them are getting built, even if they're models.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Being built from scratch. So when's the time to put that in? When the installation's going on from the get-go.
Absolutely. One thing about your comment about the 20 below, I won't say that I won't argue that point, right? That you're probably right. If you're in North Dakota, having supplemental heat in addition to the radiant floor heat is probably a good idea. Honestly, it is more because of the flooring choice than because of the radiant heat. Luxury vinyl tile, for the most part, or plank, right, for the most part, is going to be capped by the manufacturer at about 85 degrees. You check with the manufacturer of the specific flooring. Most builders know to do that. And they will limit your thermostat. All the thermostats we offer have a limiting function in them if you want to use it, that will limit the thermostat to not be able to go above that 84 or 85 degrees. Our system can output more heat than that. And so if you were to install tile, for instance, in your floor and do our Gold Heat product underneath that, then you can actually take it up higher. And you, in a well-insulated tiny house, if you do something like the way that Matt builds his, I would argue that we might be able to keep up in that environment.
Cool, even better. And one of the products that I don't even represent in the showcase, but it's near and dear to my heart, is this product called Phase Change, which actually is more of a thermal product to keeping that temperature inside the home even better. So the benefit in the mix of like a phase change matched with Gold Heat and even a air exchange system like a Lunos, you've got your superstar trifecta. Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Russ. I am going to dive in and promote more of the awesome other sponsors that are part of the showcase. Thank you for being here, and enjoy your meal.
Thank you so much. I will go ahead and post a link to those videos in the chat as well.
Perfect. All right. So next up, this is a wonderful company that I'm super excited to have met. And I actually even have, sorry, I'm moving my video around. Okay, so Univix is actually who I met in Colorado. So here's this cool video that I took of. Hey everyone, we're here at the People's Tiny House Fest, and the bank by Univix is charging all these tiny homes right here. And we have got to give you the little in-look 200-watt flexible panel. Look how thin that is. And then we've got the carbon batteries. A lot of people have heard of lithium, but these last longer and don't deal with so much inflections of heat and cool. Inverter, battery charge controller, and
I'm Chris Miller with Univix. Visit univix.com and check us out.
So we had fun making that video, but the key part is that they really had never been to an event before, and they were there. And it was so exciting because I've actually focused on sustainable renewable energy for a couple of years within the space. And here's the biggest question. What is the number one component? I'm going to see if I can bring up my chat. Number one component that makes the off-grid solar system work. There's all the components, but work like when it's dark out. What is that number one component that you need? Batteries, that's right. Barbara and Meg, you had it at the same time. Absolutely. Of course, all the systems are needed, like the charge controller and the solar panel and all of that. However, you could literally have a solar panel running a fan directly. Early days of me learning about solar, we were, in a workshop hooking up fans, directly related to the sun. There was no battery. But the key thing is we want to use, yes, true. Cyril says, and sun. Yes, we need the sun, but the batteries is the key part because that is what's going to be able to store the sun's energy and shift it so that we're using it 24/7 for that refrigerator that's going on in our home. They don't run on full power all the time unless it's a really hot day, but they're always cycling on and off. And you don't want them off obviously during the nighttime. So that is the number one. Here are the other considerations for off-grid. In fact, I was just on a call with a builder that actually a buyer of a tiny home, and they were interested in putting in an induction stovetop. And just by looking at the numbers, it was just not going to work because when you heat air, water, and food, it uses a ton of energy. Energy that, unless you live solar and you already live off grid, going over and flipping on the switch and turn on the lights, that's totally fine with solar. But the second you turn on the flame to heat up a pot of water or put on the kettle to heat it up, it's going to use a lot of energy. I don't know if you know, but like a hair dryer is like 1500 watts. Well, it's only on for a couple minutes, but if you're going to cook something for a long time, that's really a bigger issue. Or if you're going to take even a 10-minute shower, you're going to heat your space. The nice part of what Russ just said, if you're going to be heating with radiant floor heating, the nice part is that you're going to be using all of that heat as it rises past your body. So these are the considerations for when you go truly off grid. Anyone here wanting to go off grid, like they know for sure they want a solar system to run on full time? Okay, Barbara, so this is definitely for you and anyone that's watching the replay that's interested in solar. I find there's a lot of interest and then there's some realities. And one of the things that, we had a reality check was the induction stove. You got to get all the heating elements, at least as much as you can, off into propane. Now, a lot of people are like, well, that's not as sustainable. The reality is, or you'd have to buy a lot of solar panels, bigger inverter, bigger battery banks, all of that. And that just really adds the cost. However, when you actually, let me jump into this for a second, and then I was just going off on no, let me go there first. The carbon battery is what gives you the opportunity to have an off-grid system that isn't extremely costly, because the lithium batteries are really where you're going to have the big cost with most systems. And notice, this is 100% recyclable, not the case with lithium. It's full power usage versus lithium goes up to about 80% of usage. Unfortunately, also in lithium, there's cobalt mining with carbon battery. You're thinking, you're basically taking sand from the beach and putting it in this battery in the form of glass and all of that. It's maintenance free and it lasts 15 years. So this carbon battery, when I heard about this and the fact that it can do even one other thing that we didn't include on here is that it doesn't have the impact of high cold or high heat and cold fluctuations, because the lithium does have impact on that. It'll often, if it goes too hot, it'll just shut down. The reason why it'll shut down is so it doesn't ruin the battery, but then that also means that you can't use your power. So really important to know about the carbon battery. Well, let me jump back to, another consideration for off-grid is where you're at in the country. What time of day? Do you have the solar gain? If it's a hot day and it's Arizona, right, and you're in the summer, you're going to have the sun up at the time when you need the air conditioning. But now let's fast forward to, I think, Russe in North Dakota, and it's cold out, it's raining, it's snowing, and it's 8 in the morning and your feet are cold. So you've got to consider what kind of solar gain is happening in the location that you're at. And then these are the products. What I love about Univix is they've really simplified systems. And Eric's going to put in the link for the Univix information. I just sent that to you by email, Eric. And so they have a carbon battery. It's $789. This same battery and the lithium level would be triple that, kind of more in the over $1,000. And so when you can get the kind of carbon battery, they started a 4K inverter system at $15.99. They embed the charge controller and all the things that oftentimes you're having to figure out how to wire together, or your builder's having to figure out how to wire it together. And what's really important is actually leaving that stuff to the pros, because I had a builder that said they knew how to install solar, and we found that the actual builder was putting Romex wire throughout the home. That is actually something, think of like your stranded wire where you've got your multi-strands and then your solid wire. Romex is more of a solid wire because the home never moves unless you're in an earthquake in California. But if you're in a tiny home and that thing travels down the road, it's experiencing earthquake condition. So it needs more of the stranded wire. And there's very specific wires. I'm not going to go in, I'm not an electrical engineer, but we learned that our builder was putting in Romex running from the solar panels. This is a direct current going to the inverter, which is going to transform it into alternating current. And when they did that, they basically ran this through a wood structure. And if any of those insulative quality of the actual wire were to, break or open up, that is where a fire could be caused. So we definitely want to stay away from any fire provoking elements. We want to work with companies that are putting in the right systems, like inverters matched with carbon batteries. And then Univix does actually not sell their panels, but they do recommend panels for you to buy from wherever you're at in the country, because they're in New Hampshire. So if you're in Arizona, you don't want to buy the solar panel system, but you do want to buy the carbon battery and the inverters. They do sell the flexible solar panels. Oftentimes what I talk about is how much space do you have on your tiny home roof and how much space do you have on the ground? Do you want to put your tiny home under shade structure, or do you want to actually have your panels out in the sun and able to actually have a bigger array? All of that really comes into play in the design, and Univix will work with you on the design. One of the other cool things is they actually do a full unit, all completed, all in one. This is where the batteries, the inverter, the charge controller, this would be feasible for someone that is actually maybe moving around a little bit, or thinking of this as your own unit. This could be in the back of the truck. This could be built in its own little house, or you can't have this directly exposed to the elements, even though it is pretty good, well installed or well insulated from the elements, but it is wise to have something like this protected from the elements. And this is what they call the bank. So there's different opportunities for you to, check out what they have with univix.com and talk to your builder about the products that don't involve lithium batteries, because that's just going to jack up the price. Thinking of the price, our tiny home cost us $10,000 to buy the actual system with the panels. And then it cost us another $7,000 to install it correctly. It was getting installed, but it was not being installed correctly. So what I found out from Univix is think of something around the $5,000 to $6,000 for an equivalent of what we paid $17,000 for. That is super attractive. I love it. Sort of like accessible luxury, or in this case, accessible energy for many, many years to come. The batteries are usually the biggest kind of the link for when something fails, and the fact that they last 15 years is exceptional. So Eric, you can go ahead. He's already put it in the chat, the Univix off-grid system. And so now moving on to Precision Temp. Some of these companies that are sponsors, unlike Russ, where he's actually in the West Coast, a lot of them are on the East Coast. So unless I change it during the day, actually I'd love some feedback. I've been doing these showcases at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'd love some feedback about anyone thinking about them during the day, because then I could bring more of these, sponsors here and they can speak about their products. But let's dive into Precision Temp, because this is the company that provides the quality on-demand hot water heaters. And what's so great about this is, how do you want your water? I want it hot, right? I want it also reliable. We want it tankless so that you never run out of water. So many people choose the tankless systems because there's just not a lot of space in tiny homes. So instead of having a really giant tank that you have to constantly heat, the tankless is great because that's where it allows you to never run out of hot water. Additionally, it's efficient. This unit actually has no pilot light. I don't know about you, but I am not a big fan of the pilot lights. I do feel like there's some amount of energy that's just kind of constantly, being used without someone actually needing to use it. So when you need to take a shower, that's when the heating systems need to go on. But when these pilot lights that are running all over the world are going on, they're using some amounts of energy just to be in standby ready mode. So the Twin Temp 2 tankless water plus hydronic heat could be paired much like what Russ was talking about if your housing is actually needing additional heat for colder temperatures. They're actually providing this kind of blower heat in the home. So that not only handles the on-demand hot water, but it also handles the heating of the home. So that's super great with efficiency. Safety. We want to make sure that the on-demand hot water systems that are put into any home are built to ANSI or CSA. This is a Canada standard for movable tiny home. When I wanted to show this picture because Eric and I actually put in the wrong unit inside our tiny home. We bought it online. Well, just because you see something that's online doesn't mean that it's got all the certifications that you need to meet something that's going to be movable. Even if it moves 5 miles down the road, these parts inside here have to be tested for vibration. That's exactly what they do. They make sure they test, making sure everything is still connected after, intense pressure is happening. There were times when we drove down the road that I thought our ceiling fan was going to be on the ground because we hit a pothole. We could not avoid the pothole, right? You've got traffic on both sides. You are going straight, whatever's happening on the ground. So we want to make sure that the products that we buy are built to safety standards. And number one product or appliance that's in the home, I would say next to the actual stove, is that it's built for vibration, because that's what's happening inside a tiny home, especially ones on wheels. And we want to make sure it's verified. So I want to bring us out to a really cool website, tinyhouse.com. Any of you know about the global tiny house conference that happens usually once a year or even twice a year? This company, they're doing great work at verifying, because a lot of us are out here wondering, like, is this great? And I'm just going to read some reviews. But this group, tinyhouse.com, actually has put together a verification. They go through and talk about the product, and they have made sure, they bring in some installation videos, and they really do a lot of analyzing to make sure that this product is meeting the seal of approval. So if you're looking for, additional support and comfort in knowing that someone else has looked at this, there you go, tinyhouse.com. And this is widely accepted in the industry as a quality product that is going to be providing on-demand hot water heating. So that was Precision Temp. And actually one more thing, sorry. I'm going to click here. Okay, don't click the button. There we go. Really cool thing. They are offering a flash sale, $200 off any purchase of their products using the winter 2022 code. So if you're in a situation, even if your build's happening in the future and you know that you want to get this product into your build, or you want to talk to your builder about this, do they install Precision Temp? Because when you order a tiny home, oftentimes, you're really putting a lot of trust in them to choose all the products. So really important to make sure you're getting the quality product. I have told builders when they install the wrong kind of product, you know, to replace it and actually put in a product that was built to RV or movable standards. Okay. So it happens, you know, a lot of new builders that are out there, they don't know, they build what they're used to building, which is homes on foundation that don't move. So really check in with them. They're offering you a great discount winter 2022 until November 29th. Okay, so Natureloo, this is a brand new company that was added to the showcase. And I want to scroll down here and share with you.
For a tiny
Natureloo.
home that's in one spot for up to 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, this is a perfect product. Very successful in Australia and in New Zealand. And we now think that there's opportunities here in California, in the US for that matter. Simple product, very easy to use, good for the environment. Yeah, it's got a lot of benefits.
So there we were, right next to Natureloo. We were across from them this whole time. Let me get out of here. There we go, escape. And we being across from them, we were just checking out this product. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. Come to find out, they were flying back to Australia and they were really looking for someone to bring their product out to a number of different events. And we're like, this is exactly what we do. So it was a perfect union. And now we actually have one of these units. We will be bringing it to Fresno, and we'll be bringing it to the last two events of the year in Fresno, and then also Tiny Fest in Arizona. So this is how it really works. This would be inside, let me actually go there, inside the tiny home. So this kind of wall is sort of exposing you to the inside the tiny home. And then this chamber goes down out into the chamber of service. And then there's a venting that happens so that you keep the, you know, any odors away. And then there's also an excess liquid hose and a leachate drain. And then there's also the out of service chamber. Anyone here looking for a compost toilet for their tiny home to be truly off grid? Anyone put that in the chat? Say me in the chat, because this would be a product that goes beyond what a lot of people say. They want a composting toilet. And what are out there are two products, the Natureloo, I'm sorry, the Natureloo is what we're talking about, Separate and Nature's Head. But neither of them are true composting toilets. I know because I had a Separate. We paid $1,000 for it. And it's basically a glorified bucket that holds the solids away from the liquid. So Separate, it does exactly what it's talking about. It separates the liquids from the solids. And those are great, but you're still having to deal with the solids. When we were traveling, we put them in landfill. But if people really living out in, you know, far away or any kind of rural scenario, having a toilet that can actually do the composting and break down and all of that. And so this is the actual pictures. This is a beautiful design. They've really did a lot of work to make it gorgeous, right, inside your home. And here's what it looks like, you know, on top of a table, but here's what it looks like inside a tiny home. And these are different designs. And they've had a lot of success there in Australia. Let's see, here's the about part. This is them and their evolution. Oh, here we go, the blog. So here we go within a tiny home. So there it is inside, right next to it. And then underneath the home is that chamber below. I love it. No crevices to get yucky. Yes, yes, exactly. These are beautiful toilet design. You know, nothing like, I've personally had a Sunmar, these giant toilets. They literally like took up, in fact, they took up an entire corner of the room that did all in one. But to have it exposed away underneath the home, which no one's actually accessing anyway, and it's usually up 17 inches, which is the clearance that you need, or even 24 inches, depending on the trailer that you have. Now you can have all of that sort of away from you in the indoors. So this is another amazing product. It also talks about the handling of the humanure and the precautions. They really go into talking about all kinds of things on their blog and making sure that, you know what you're doing with this toilet. They even get into the talk about, all kinds of things messy and maintaining the ventilation inside the toilet. So all of those smells that we don't want inside go away. So that is the Nature Loo. And Eric, you're going to drop that link again. Awesome. All right. So now I'm going to hand this over to my husband, who's going to talk more about TinyFreedom. Eric, do you have the slides up?
I do not.
Okay, here, I'll push through them. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, Lindsay and I called our program TinyFreedom. TinyFreedom is our financial freedom, and we include the 5 steps to building wealth beyond the tiny home. That, you know, maybe once you get your tiny home and now you're saving all this money on rent, what do you do with your money so that you could be financially freedom? And we start with the first concept. You might have gotten this in school, but you might not have. I'm going to catch you up. Power of compound interest. This is the power of small habits that turn into huge differences in your life over time. And this picture, these 2 gentlemen, one starts at age 25, and by age 35, he's done investing in this case. And it's a picture. He stops after 10 years, and at 8%, 8% is a good number. It's achievable, but it's good. He grows to 157,000, and his colleague, who starts 10 years later, invests all the way through 65 at the same rate, never catches up. So when's the time to start knowing this about the compound interest? It's now, or 30 years ago. We talk about diversification, and the metaphor is always eggs in a basket. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So we got a picture, and it's just putting your money in different places that have different effects on the marketplace, so that the risk isn't coordinated. It isn't all in one place. We talk about tax engineering. So almost more important than whether to pay taxes is when you pay your taxes. And it's pretty simple if you understand this basic concept. There are 3 main ways, they're like buckets of ways to save money. The first is in your taxable account. This is your stocks, funds, your savings accounts, CDs. It's taxable. It's taxable in the year that you earned it. It's taxable in its growth, and then it's taxable as a distribution. Better is the tax deferred. That's your 401ks, your IRAs, your SEP IRAs, your fixed annuities, savings bonds. You get a tax benefit now, and you get tax-free growth at the cost of paying those taxes as income in the year in which you take it. And you don't get access to it until you're age 59, and you are subject to required minimum distributions after age 72. So a lot of people think that their tax rate is going to go down in their retirement because, hey, I'll be earning less income. Not true. A lot of people find themselves with just as much income as they did when they were working because of these vehicles, these 401ks. And the third bucket is called tax advantaged. That's where you pay your taxes now, but then you get growth and harvest tax free. So there's only 2 ways to do this in the market, in the American market. One is a Roth IRA, and the other is cash accumulation in life insurance. And I'm ready to talk about each of those. But just kind of let me get in the chat. Who do you think is taxes going to go up, down, or stay the same in the future? If anybody wants to chat me an answer. Barbara B thinks up. You know, it's anybody's guess, but it's a good guess that it's going to go up. So then that leads to the next question is, why am I postponing taxes if I think the taxes are going to go up in the future? Why pay them later when they're at a higher rate than pay them now when they're the lowest they'd ever be? Riddle me that one. Thank you, Lindsay. Next slide. Even more important than all that is protection of assets. It's a living trust, a trust, and a will. And we help people set these up. We have a third party that It works with families at a very discount rate. Yeah, get your property, your mutual funds, your retirement accounts all into one living trust that works. It's basically a corporation that has one client, you. And it's a really great way. And it's really important for your benefactors to avoid probate, that your assets won't go into probate. Probate, just for anybody who doesn't know, it's kind of like the DMV of the judicial system. It takes like 6 months. It takes a long time. If you just die with a will, basically a judge has to decide what happens to it. And the will is just advisory. So it doesn't really have the weight. So a trust is ACEs. And we help people find their financial independence number. That's the number that once you achieve it, your passive income is greater than your current needs. And who wants that? You know, like, oh, I don't have to go to work. I don't have to make any calls. I don't have to do anything so that I can pay my current bills, my health insurance, my rent over my head, my food. It's that rate at which you may choose to work, but you don't have to. You could work for a charity like Lindsay and I talked to Finally Families. You could work for them or consult or be on their board. Whatever is your excitement about your financial independence, that's the number. And that's what we help our clients do, is achieve financial independence. And the way I do it is I start with a 15-minute financial discovery call. And I have a Calendly, and it's under the tinyhomelady.com/tinyfreedom. You can find my Calendly there, get on my schedule, and let's have a chat. I like to give a presentation a little bit more about those buckets that I was talking about, the tax engineering. And then I help people do a financial needs analysis. So that's just a question answer period about what's going on in your current state. And finally, I present solutions. And if it's a solution that'll be tailored for you, but it doesn't actually cost anything for you to hear the solution. And I hope you take advantage of it. I hope you take advantage of my time. Get on my Calendly, take a 15-minute call, and let's get started and have a chat.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone
Thank you,
have any
Lindsay.
questions about this? We really love the whole building wealth beyond the tiny home. And if anyone doesn't have a living trust, definitely important. If you own more than $1,000 in assets, then it's definitely for you, and especially if you have youth and children. Okay, so bringing me to the next sponsor, what I've really appreciated is being a part of the Tiny Home Industry Association and being on the board. I am one of the board members that is now finally working in my own area of Mendocino County and getting Mendocino County legalized for movable tiny homes. I planted the seed 5 years ago, and lo and behold, after, actually, I think I have the slide, there we go. Here's the organization mission statement, focusing on regulation and changes, develop industry best practices and construction standards so that we create a widespread use of tiny homes as permissible and permanent housing. There are some amazing people here on this lineup on this page that have really moved the needle on this industry in providing so many more options for people and living in tiny homes. And one of those is Placer County, which leads us to Mendocino County, where I live. And Placer County, think Tahoe area, that's the picture of Tahoe. And they not only approve them movable tiny homes as ADUs, but also for cluster development and on certain zone properties as standalone units. That is where we start getting into zoning laws. And zoning laws have historically been ripe with all kinds of segregation, racism, wealth gaps, you name it. And we are now starting to change that whole notion of what is allowed and not allowed on land. And so by doing that, Placer County did something that made Mendocino County, or at least the supervisor of Mendocino County, sit up and go, hey, wait a minute, if they're doing that, we can do that too, because they were told that the state did not allow this. They were told incorrect information. And when they started seeing, they being Supervisor Williams, started seeing all these other counties and cities getting approved, they're like, wait a minute, if they're doing this, obviously the state is approving. Yes, the state is absolutely 100% on board with movable tiny homes. There is a letter to prove it. And now we have a briefing document that goes out to all these cities and states. Actually, not only is the county that I'm in interested in it, but I just got off the call with the city of Ukiah, because that's an actual, different jurisdiction. There's going to be counties and then cities within counties. And unless the city is, small enough, they're unincorporated and part of the county. But now our city of Ukiah wants their own briefing document to learn more about how they can amend their own jurisdiction. And now I've just affected, 20,000 people that live here in Ukiah with the opportunity to put a tiny home in the backyard. And actually there's a home right next door to me that would be perfect. And this all goes also part of the International Tiny House Provisions, something that Thea has been working on with the International Code Council, Modular Home Builders Association, and the Building Institute. And this is where we start pulling together all the different standards, the RV standards, the International Residential Code, and the HUD standard. It is a 2,000-page document. Certain builders and also jurisdictions would be ideal for this document, because this is the one that allows people to figure out, can they build a home to different standards? And then it will open up for more opportunities. So all of this is because the Tiny Home Industry Association, fully volunteer run, very few people actually get paid to work with this organization, including Dan Fitzpatrick. And that's got to change, because now that we're seeing the snowball effect of more and more cities and counties adopting this, Portland grabbed ordinance language from cities and counties that have been adopted in California. That is one of the beauties of government. They go out, they look at what's public record, they take a look at it, and it'll all of a sudden, language that was written by Thea for city of Fresno that was about 4 or 5 years ago that got approved is now showing up in cities and counties now all over the country. So we're actually utilizing the language that has been proven to be successful and approved. And we need to move that forward even more. And one of the things we do as part of the membership is do these Thea Thursdays. This was the recent one we did. And today we're doing the double header. We just had Finally Family Homes on, nonprofit that supports youth aging out of the foster system to get into tiny homes, which I think is an amazing opportunity. We reach those FIN numbers and you really feel passionate about supporting youth in tiny homes, then you can go and volunteer at any time and donate to Finally Family Homes. In addition to that, we host networking events. We're actually going to be having another networking event at Gazebo Gardens at the city of Fresno when we host Tiny House Expo. So what will happen is all the people will come, they'll go into the tiny homes, and then everything shuts down. And then where do the builders go? They go to the networking event. And this is where magic starts happening. People like Back Porch Homes, talk to Dan Fitzpatrick, talking to Lou from Tiny Mountain Houses up in Oregon, with Nick from California Tiny House Expedition, if anyone's familiar with that great YouTube channel. NTA, David Tompos is actually on the board of Thea, and they're the ones that are certifying so many builders to be able to have multiple standards. You can build to ANSI, IRC, and HUD, all in one unit. And this is all because people get together and network. That's the power of networking and relationships. And of course, we do exhibits, tabling, showcasing tiny homes. The Thea. And we do this at these events, these last 2 events of the year. It's been an amazing year this year with Go Tiny Showcase being at 9 of the events this last year. And November 4th to the 6th is Fresno. And then December 3rd to the 4th is Phoenix. So definitely come out to those. I love that, these events happen around the country. So if you're interested in getting into a tiny home, you haven't been into one yet, go and join us at these events, because this is the best way to, kick the tire, literally. And I'm going to be hosting VIP tours at both of these events. We already have a dozen people signed up for the Fresno shows, and you get to skip the line. There is an early access that is before the show opens and during the event where you get to skip the line. And it's $57 for the VIP tour, as well as the ticket has its own cost. And What I've learned from people attending these VIP tours, it's a great opportunity to learn from me. I know the builders, I know your certain situation, and we make that connection. Okay, so happening at these shows, and it's going to be exciting to bring them to all the shows that I go to. And welcome to the Go Tiny Academy. This is something that has been near and dear to my heart and pretty much created out of our situation of our builder going bust. And us turning it into something that now is a full-fledged course. And I see a number of my wonderful Go Tiny Academy students here. Thank you so much. Give a shout out. Give us one big takeaway as to what you're getting from the Academy. Because I know Meg was in here and I know Andy. I can't necessarily see all, let's see, do I see the people? Yes, there you are. So share with us in the chat, what is one of the biggest takeaways that you're getting from the Go Tiny Academy as I continue on? Because the goal that I have is big. It's bigger than what I can do alone, right? It's 100,000 tiny homes. And I can share with you, we had one of my recent graduates actually share a text. Here we go. And I'm super excited and very proud. If anyone saw me do this earlier, I'm going to do it again because it's so cool. There's her home right there. That is a text that she said, hey, it's almost done. That was October 11th. And this was yesterday. Here's the home now in the yard, ready to be delivered. Yay! So I can now officially say I've got Andrea Montano and I've got Dale. I have 3 homes, so I can drop this 100,000 homes down a couple notches, but we got a long way to go, right? That's a big number. But here's the deal. We need 6 million homes in the United States. In fact, and I've heard different reports, we need anywhere from 1 to 3 million in California alone. Now, if I just take that low number, 1 million divided by 100, that's traditionally how many homes a tiny home builder will build in a year. And this is a good quality builder. That is the number of builders that we need just to meet the demand of 1 million homes. We don't have 10,000 builders, not anywhere near. We definitely have probably close to maybe 1,000. You know, it's not easy to, you don't go to one website and find all the builders. And if they are building, they might be building onesies and twosies or maybe 10 a year, whatever. But we have a long way to go to meet the demand of housing. And we are nowhere near. In fact, we've been building less homes since the 70s and our population has doubled, right? So it's just really out of whack. And this is why we are in such a state and such a need for housing. And this is why tiny homes are so appealing for so many. But for so many, they don't necessarily know about all the different types that are out there. So I'm going to do a quick little education that is included in my academy. And that the first one is there is no movable tiny home standard. Okay. There is, however, oops, that was a little bit of an error. Tiny home is a marketing term. You go into your city planner, you don't get a tiny home permit, right? You get a permit that's going to be related to the next types that I'm about to talk about. But every type you're about to see was built in a factory, arrives on wheels, and then placed on X marks the spot. Whether that's driven in on the wheels, whether that's craned in, whatever it may be, if it stays on the wheels or if it gets removed from the wheels, it will be made in a factory. And we are transforming this notion of factory built. I often, use air quotes and talk about it's not your grandma and grandpa's mobile home anymore. It's not the siding and the thickness of the walls or the lack of thickness of the walls that were built in the 40s when we had another big demand for housing. It is a 2x4 construction. It's something that looks like this, 2x6 construction. It can go up to 400 square feet, built to the ANSI standard. However, one of the bummers is that it's for temporary living. So this is one of the biggest issues that a lot of cities and elected officials or staffers have looked at this and said, well, that's an RV. It's built to temporary living. We need something that's more built for permanence. And so that leads us to the next type, which is International Residential Code. This goes to the International Tiny House Provisions document that I spoke about briefly. And there's a number of different names, but they all basically are built to the state building code, whether that's modular, prefab, factory built, they're all built to the International Residential Code, which is adopted by every state in the nation except for Wisconsin. They have their own residential dwelling uniform code, but basically every state in the nation. So you can have this home being built in a factory, arrives on wheels, and then placed on permanent foundation. And it'd be as if you were to build that home from scratch on site. And I can tell you the home that you're looking at right now by Prefab Innovations is the Pocket 440 home. That is $86,000. So I'm going to do some quick math. 86,000 divided by 440. That's $195 a square foot. I can go to some other websites and tell you right now that the minimum size for in the 400 square feet is around $200,000 to have something built from scratch on up. This is in California. I don't, I just know that I'm trying to do apples to apples, like a 400 square foot home built from scratch on site, 225,000. You still have to pay for a permit and all that. This one, $86,000. You still have to pay for transportation. That's why you want to get it closer to where you're living, especially now with all the transportation costs going up. You still need to pay for permit fees and hookups and all that. But remember, 225, 86. You can have multiples of these homes, especially in San Diego where they do allow for multiples, and also the city of Fort Bragg. So that's the International Residential Code. The last one is housing urban development. It's a national standard. It can actually go lower than 320 square feet. You do have to get approvals for it, but think of 320 square feet or more of companies that are actually building to this standard. There actually are tiny home builders that are starting to build to this standard, which is California Tiny House here in the state of California. They're starting to look at ways to use the existing standards that are out there and build to those, because that means that they can go in more places, because that's one of the biggest issues back to the whole ANSI code, which is known as an RV. And here's the product that I'm talking about. This is the Vesta 32. And key factors for HUD, they need to have 2 doors, no loft unless the loft is noted that it's a storage loft. Need to have a minimum 70 square feet bedroom space for 2 people, 50 square feet for 1 person. I don't know where their sleep police are, but that's their requirements. So what's good about this house is that he built it to 80 square feet, and it needs a minimum of 150 square feet of living space. There are other parameters, obviously, with regards to HUD in terms of how you're building, where they're building, and getting certified. However, really important to know that this tiny home can be certified to HUD standard, meaning that it can be placed as a single standalone unit on property as long as you meet the minimum size requirements for the zoning. Because remember, building standards has everything to do with the building. Zoning has everything to do with the land, what is allowed and what is not allowed. Minimum size requirements, for example, in the city of Encinitas, 600 square feet. So this 320 square feet, even though it's built to HUD, would not be allowed. You'd have to go with either an International Residential Code built building or a HUD building that's built to 600 square feet, or do some advocacy within the local city and get them to reduce those minimum size requirements. That's actually what we need to do next in zoning laws. If we bring those down into the if we brought them down to 300 to 400 square feet, the adoption of movable tiny homes across the country would just explode because it would meet the zoning requirements. So I've been really diving into building standards, but as of the last few weeks, I've been learning a ton about zoning laws. And zoning laws came from racial and segregation practices. We used to call them redlining. Now they're called zoning. So we've got a long way to go, but we're making progress because this unit that's HUD can be installed in a permanent foundation system. That's not a slab. What if this is at an angle? My friend Andy here, he's got property that, is literally on a slope. So there's no way they're going to put a concrete slab on the slope. They're going to do something like helical piers, metal adjustable piers, block piers, all kinds of different systems. But this is an allowable system to place a HUD unit on. So the fact that we can do that, well, what if it's 320 square feet? You get this grounded into the ground, and then in 5 to 10 years, you need to move. Okay, it's a giant screw in the ground, or it's a metal adjustable pier. It's not a big thing to move that home. The bigger the home gets, right, you get into like the 400, 500, 600 square feet, most likely that's not going to move. But if it's 320 square feet and it came and arrived there on a trailer and it placed on these metal adjustable piers or helical piers, it can move again. So we're starting to bend the rules, not necessarily bend the rules, but work through the opportunities that the industry has largely been not attending to, because everything that started in this tiny home industry started in the DIY world. Then they adopted more and more standards, and now we're starting to finally get some recognition as an industry for the type of standards we can build to. And this is where I put all of this in the GoTiny Academy. We blend the land, the build, and the finance together, because it's these three pillars that you've got to check off to really realize your dream. Now, I will say for Andrea Montano, one of my recent graduates, what she really needed was the build and the finance. She was going to, as long as she got the tiny home and got the finance for the tiny home, she will figure out the land. And that is something that a lot of people like, okay, I got to figure out all of it. Unless you already own land, like my friend Andy, he already owns the land. He knows this is the direction. So he's going to start there. Then he's going to work towards the financing, because that's what he's working on. And then once he works towards the financing, he's going to figure out what kind of home he's going to build, right? So it really depends on which one is going to be the driving factor. Also a number of people that I work with that are in the real estate profession, that are investors, they may be looking to figure out where they can place a community. And, there's a number of investment strategies. This is why I've started the real estate investment group, and I'm so excited to be launching that. I see Eliza here, because there is such a need to meet that 100,000 tiny homes across the country that I'm going for. We need everybody, all hands on deck, to come together and bring together these pieces. And so in doing so, I put together these in modules, really starting with module 1 with the building blocks. This is where we talk about the 4 types of tiny homes. And then we talk about the financial, how to price a tiny home, what kind of financing is available based on the 4 types of tiny homes that we have. And then looking at the land is the big one, especially around zoning. You've got to be aware, because there actually are people that have gone out, purchased land. They thought they were going to build a community. They didn't check the CCNRs. Lo and behold, neighbors did not want a tiny home village in that area, and they had control and all of that. So they lost $30,000 on the property. Not something to actually, go into. You want to go into this and, with eyes wide open, having done your due diligence. And as Andy Lee says, deed restrictions are the worst. Yeah, understanding what's going on with the title, all of that. And I'm actually really excited. I have been doing a ton of research in this. Like, I am not someone that grew up knew about zoning. We didn't learn about it in school. I mean, it's not necessarily a topic I think I think there's a lot of topics that should be taught in school. I don't know about zoning, but boy, oh boy, is it the thing that will block a developer. And actually, that is why developers are so successful, because they will take the big risks. They will make sure they secure the land, get the entitlement for what it is they want to do, and then proceed going forward. But it's that risk part, right? That they get the big win when they make it happen. So we're going to talk a lot about land, whether that's for an individual unit, whether that's in the backyard, or more. Obviously, that's a big one. I talked about that for a while. The builder is actually, this is a sweet spot for me, because this is where it all started. When our builder went out of business in the middle of the build, and we hit the road after 8 months of finishing our tiny home. And the very first event, when we hit the road, we were not planning on going to any tiny home events. We just were off on our journey and living our dream. And then we heard there was a Colorado Tiny House Festival in Colorado. We're like, oh, let's go to that. We're on our way anyway. Let's go to that. Then they invited me to speak, because they heard about my story. Actually, the producer, Art, heard about my story. Well, of course, what I was going to talk about were the top 10 tips for hiring your builder. So this entire module is me breaking down the strategies as to how to find the right builder. What are the due diligence things to go through? Some of us in the GoTiny Academy recently were talking about how you can find more reviews to buy a tent. I recently did this, buy a tent on Amazon, than I can find reviews from happy people and happy customers buying tiny homes. And there's a reason for that. A lot of builders don't want you calling their past buyers. But what if there was a video that someone could actually say, hey, this is what happened. They don't need to share their name or their number, but just some kind of reassurance that this person had a really great experience. And obviously time date that, you don't want something 5 years ago. So there's just little techniques and strategies to make sure that your builder's the right one. And I will say one of the women inside our academy actually had a builder go out of business on her and go bankrupt with $20,000 of her money vanished. So, and I actually, that same builder, there were two women in my academy that started, and they were both looking at them. And at that time, I heard some murmurings of what was going on with this builder. And I said, hold up, don't go that path. And sure enough, they stole hundreds of $1,000s of deposits. And, it's unfortunate because a lot of people thought they were great. They had the website, right? Everything's believable if you have a website. There's a lot more to it than that. And there's actually 40 questions that I have you go through that you should be able to answer about a builder on a spreadsheet that I provide inside the academy. So module 5 ties all that. We've been doing a lot of Zoom calls because of what happened recently with the ITHP. I had to go back into the drawing board and re-record a number of the modules because such a big change happened when the ITHP came out. So we've been doing weekly Zoom calls, actually twice a week, and having all kinds of great conversations, and all of those are embedded into the module 5. So with the Academy, the VIP program is a 2-year access, weekly live meetups on Zoom. For those of you that are in the Academy, I've just recently, this is the first announcement that I'm no longer doing just the monthly, I'm doing them weekly because I felt like it's just not enough doing a monthly. I think a weekly is actually going to be better to really move the needle. If this is something that you can look at as an accountability partner, then do that, because I have seen some major changes in people realizing their dream because they said yes to themselves and invested. And so inside the Academy is those 6 training modules, the workbooks and checklists to guide you through, the complimentary 1-year individual membership to Thea, because inside Thea, I already know there's a bunch of resources to a gentleman that's done 25 years of development and also been responsible for getting movable tiny homes passed around the country. So who better to learn from than Dan Fitzpatrick with a 3-part series on how to buy land without buying land, doing your due diligence. All of that is in the Thea resource library. And of course, as in an ever-changing industry, bonus modules will be released. In fact, I'm working with a woman right now all about feng shui for tiny homes. And so there's all kinds of trainings that I'm just like, I'm not stopping. We're just going to keep adding more and more to this academy. And you get the private tiny home consulting call, all of that for only $397. And that is an amazing price that is probably not going to last and going to go up in the new year, 2023. So here we go. If you want to do like more of a deep dive, we're going to spend a full hour going into the academy and giving you a little inside scoop of what's going on inside. If this is something that, either for you or anyone else that out there that really wants to go tiny, but they quite haven't met their dreams. I meet people all the time. I've been dreaming about this for 10 years. I'm like, wow. I can't imagine them, or I'm looking at it and I'm thinking it might happen for me in another couple of years. My big question is like, why so long? And a lot of people, when I ask that question, they don't really have a good answer. They might, if they're like really knowing they're going to retire or their kids' property or something like that going on, that's a really good time where you actually know the timing. But it might be just that you need more support around your dream. And that's really what I'm here for, is to give you support around your dream. So there's all my links. My husband put the free webinar in the chat. And I'm so appreciative of all of you being here till 16 minutes after. Any questions on any of the showcase sponsors or what I just shared about the Academy, I am here to answer. I see some familiar faces. Hi, Cheryl. Cheryl's going tiny. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, hopefully sooner than later.
Yes, I know, because you've been working on the land part, right?
Yes.
What's
Yeah.
the status as of right now? Because I've been following Cheryl. We both have the same last name, so I can never forget your last name.
Right. The status as of right now is I'm still waiting to hear the well drilling situation on the property. So the owners had a meeting with the county and they are waiting to hear from the county still, even though it's dragged out for 2 years.
Ah, yes, I know. One of the builders right here, they talk about how it only takes 6 weeks to build these homes. And they said, well, your permits are usually going to take longer than the home that will be built. In fact, we will not start building your home until we get a certain point within the permitting process when we know. So based on that, are you also in communications with a builder? Have you finalized or kind of working within a certain number of them?
No, I mean, I have a few in mind. I haven't spoken to them with specifics yet. So, yeah, I want to get the land in place first. So,
Great.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I see Sharon is here. Sharon, any update on your tiny home? Thank you, Cheryl. Because I know Sharon's up to big things. If she doesn't unmute herself, I can share what, let's see, windows that were supposed to be here. Ah, yes, the windows. Oh my goodness. I've heard, oh, here in August. No, like August 2023. Oh, not coming until November. Okay, good. That's better than August 2023. But when you're waiting them for August and they show up in November, I've heard that, actually I've heard from other builders, like, I think we're going to start building our own windows because that has been the biggest delay out there that I've heard of. Yeah, especially if you're ordering, special ones. Yay. Thank you, Shelley. And so anything, so your windows are getting done. So what Sharon's doing is actually doing a hybrid situation where she's having a builder build her shell and actually put in the roof, the windows, and what they call that is a dry-in unit. So everything, if you open the door inside the tiny home, you'll see studs, and then she's going to be able to finish it. So she'll put in the cabinets, the flooring. I think there's even the plumbing that she's going to be doing. And that's one way, if you've got the skill set and you've got the space to actually build, then you're going to be actually doing this. And Sharon and I met 2 years ago, back when I was only doing one-on-one private consulting. So before I did the one-to-many, it was very much recommended to do the one-to-one. And we went through about 6 months of consulting and really developing her beautiful build design. And now that she's in the GoTiny Academy, I love it. It's going to be so exciting to see your picture come to life. So she says she's scared, but she's a go-getter, right? And that's really what I talk about is I'm looking for go-getters. So if you know anyone that wants to go tiny, they've been dreaming about it, and they seem like they're like, you know what, whatever comes my way, I'll figure it out, right? You don't need to know all the answers before you start. What you need to know is, are you the kind of person that can figure it out along the way? Because if this was so easy to be done, this industry would be way beyond. Now I look at ITHP as helping, but ITHP came out like all of a month ago, and only one builder that I know of in the country, actually maybe two, I have to confirm that, but I do know of one builder, and they're the ones that have been on the boards and committees doing all this offsite construction work and guiding them. What's going to happen in state of Colorado come next summer when the state of Colorado actually implements regulation on tiny homes? That is going to be the very first regulation that we're going to see from a state government on tiny homes, because tiny homes everywhere is something that they actually decided was not allowed. They want to actually have it be more like built to the International Residential Code or HUD code, where an inspector will come to a factory physically and do that kind of inspection. Right now, when you get ANSI or NFPA, you can do the inspection by phone, right? Virtual. So, it's one state, and fingers crossed, at one point, they actually had in the legislation that this would be retroactive, that if anyone was living in a home that had already been built, this would be retroactive. That means all kinds of builders would have to recall homes And that was like, oh, no, 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 we can't do that. So the tiny home industry people got involved with the people, the legislators that were writing this, because oftentimes legislators, they don't know the industry, but they're going to make sweeping regulations that are going to majorly affect it negatively. So those got pulled away, thankfully, because when this goes and gets passed, other states can also look to that and start copying that. So we're all kind of in a little bit of suspense, but we do know that there's a lot of tiny home advocates that are involved in that and making sure that happens correctly. All right, so yeah, Sharon says there's a big hang up in the beginning thinking I had to have all the answers from the start. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for persevering. That is really the telltale sign of someone that's going to make their dreams happen is just persevering. And I see it from a number of people that are here that I know of. And all of you, may you have a blessed Go Tiny evening, wherever you're at, wherever you're watching the replay. And we'll see you on the other side. Go check out the webinar that we're going to be having, live webinar, and we'd love to see you there because we need more people in tiny homes. Yay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Lindsay. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, Lindsay.
Bye.